Drug-related shootings in Richmond, like this one from New Year's Day, are occurring at a rate higher than that of any other Virginia city.
The city's murder rate soared and eventually doubled, making Richmond the second deadliest city per capita in the United States.
Richmond, Virginia in the late 1980s was a city on the brink. The crack cocaine epidemic was surging, and the murder rate had soared to the fourth highest in the nation. In this volatile climate, a new drug crew emerged, an organization that spread from the Newtowne neighborhood to Central Gardens. They called themselves the Newtowne Gang, reflecting the name of the local neighborhood they ran. The gang's founders were outsiders and locals combined. Corey C.O. Johnson, raised on the harsh streets of Harlem and Trenton, teamed up with Richard Whitey Tipton, a friend from New Jersey, and James H. J.R. Roane Jr., a small-time Richmond dealer hungry for power. This unlikely alliance of New York hustle and Richmond street knowledge set the stage for a brutal enterprise. Johnson's early life had already primed him for trouble. He grew up amid chaos, physically abused by a drug-addicted mother, abandoned at 13, and shuttled through foster care. By his late teens, he could barely read or write and had an IQ of 77. Tipton and Johnson were part of a Harlem crew known as the New York Boys, who sold crack up north. When key members of that crew got knocked in 1991, Johnson and Tipton headed south to Richmond, looking to duplicate their success in a new market. They linked up with Roane and started flooding Richmond's neighborhoods with cocaine. What began as a small crack distribution ring would soon explode into one of the deadliest chapters in Richmond's history. Winter 1992 became Richmond's season of blood. Over just 45 days in January and February, the Newtowne Gang unleashed terror with an intensity the city had never seen. At least 11 people were killed in a 45-day period in 1992, all at the hands of Johnson's crew, as they eliminated anyone they thought might get in the way of their growing business. Their victims, rival drug dealers, suspected informants, even friends and family members. The brutality was staggering. On January 4th, 1992, the kind of day where even the devil wore gloves. Richmond's south side sat quiet. A black sedan crept down a back road. Inside sat Douglas Talley, twitchy and nervous, eyes darting between Richard Whitey Tipton I and James J.R. Roane. Talley thought they were just out for a ride, maybe to smooth things over. He'd messed up, botched a deal, but in this game there was always room to make amends. Or so he thought. But the silence in that car was heavy. Not the kind that meant forgiveness, but the kind that hummed just before blood spilled. They pulled off the road. Roane slipped behind him like a shadow, grabbing him from the rear. Tipton stepped in with a blade. Then came the steel. Again. And again. And again. For 3 to 5 minutes, the night was nothing but wet gasps and the sound of steel hitting flesh. 84 times that blade danced. His head, his neck, his chest. No mercy, no pause, just rage. Another ghost made by the Newtowne Gang. A warning written in red. In Richmond, loyalty was a razor's edge, and Douglas Talley had just learned what it meant to fall off the blade. January 13th, 1992. Inside a dimly lit apartment, Douglas Moody sat half paranoid, half bold. He'd been pushing weight in Newtown territory. And in the dope game, stepping out of line was just another way to dig your own grave. Richard Whitey Tipton and James J.R. Roane weren't ones for warnings. They didn't talk about it. They acted. That night, they crept up to Moody's door. Tipton didn't even knock. He came through, raised the iron, and let it bark twice, both shots thudding into Moody's back. But Moody wasn't done yet. Wounded and bleeding, he crashed through a window. He hit the ground and ran. A man sprinting from the Reaper's grip. Tipton and Roane gave chase. No hesitation, no mercy. Roane detoured just long enough to snatch something special, a military-style combat knife. It had been stashed away in a nearby apartment, part of the gang's war chest, held for Curtis Thorne. They caught up with Moody in the front yard. He was crawling now. Roane didn't say a word. He just fell on him like a butcher, driving the blade deep again and again. 18 times. And just like that, the cold Richmond wind had one more name to carry. Another rival erased. The killing spree tore through the city's housing projects and corners. On January 14th, 1992, Corey Johnson walked into a tavern and gunned down a rival dealer, shooting him 15 times at close range. Some murders were business, meant to silence witnesses or competitors, but others were deeply personal. In one case, James J.R. Roane hunted down a man for dating Roane's girlfriend and shot him dead in a jealous rage. The violence peaked on a single day, February 1st, 1992, when 4 people were killed in just hours. That day, Johnson and his henchmen invaded one home to collect on a drug debt and ended up executing 3 people, a dealer who owed money along with 2 friends who just happened to be there. Elsewhere that same night, Roane and the others ambushed another target on the street, killing him and wounding his sister with 6 gunshots as her children watched in horror. One 7-year-old boy later testified about the nightmare he witnessed, stating, "He saw JR blow away his uncle and shoot his mother 6 times. By the time the smoke cleared in February 1992, Richmond was gripped by fear. Longtime residents had never seen a killing spree like it. Rival drug dealers, potential witnesses, suspected snitches, even relatives, all wiped out by the Newtowne gang. In those weeks, the Newtowne Crew had turned neighborhoods into war zones. The city's murder tally was skyrocketing, with the Newtowne gang single-handedly responsible for almost a quarter of the homicides early that year. In dimly lit project hallways and corner stores, everyone knew that crossing Johnson's crew, or even being mistaken for an informant, could mean a death sentence. Richmond police and federal agents scrambled to end the bloodshed. As the bodies piled up, investigators decided there was only one sure way to stop the killing: invoke a new federal law that allows the death penalty for drug kingpins who murder. U.S. Attorney Richard Cullen's office, working with homicide detectives like C.T. Woody Jr., assembled a massive case. By April 1992, a federal grand jury had indicted the Newtowne gang. Attorney General William Barr personally approved seeking the death penalty for Johnson, Tipton, and Roane, a bold move never before attempted against multiple defendants in one drug case. When the trial opened in Richmond's U.S. District Court in January 1993, it drew a packed courtroom and intense media attention. It was a groundbreaking trial, the first in the nation in which several gang members faced execution at once, under the 1988 federal drug kingpin statute. The proceedings laid bare the gang's reign of terror. The prosecution presented over 90 witnesses, from grieving family members to former associates who had turned informant. After 6 weeks of testimony, on February 3, 1993, the jury returned guilty verdicts on a host of charges. Johnson was convicted of 7 murders, Tipton of 6, and Roane of 3, each killing committed in furtherance of a continuing criminal enterprise, as the verdict read. Less than 2 weeks later, on February 16, 1993, the same jury deliberated over punishment. They decided all 3 men should be put to death by lethal injection. It was a stunning outcome, marking only the 2nd time federal death penalties were imposed under the new drug kingpin law. After the trial, the Newtowne gang's reign ended, but the story was far from over. In 2020, the U.S. federal government suddenly resumed executions after a long hiatus, and the remaining federal death row inmates were scheduled to die one by one. Corey Johnson's date with death was set for January 14, 2021. His 2 partners in crime, Tipton and Roane, were not on the immediate execution list. They had won temporary stays back in 2006 and remained in legal limbo, but Johnson's number finally came up. On the night of January 14, 2021, Corey Johnson was executed by lethal injection at the federal prison in Terre Haute. After Johnson's death, a new chapter of mercy was extended to his co-defendants. By 2021, Virginia abolished the death penalty entirely. James Roane and Richard Tipton, still on federal death row, never faced the fate that Johnson did. In fact, as years passed, their sentences were commuted, reducing their sentences to life in prison without parole rather than execution.